All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Zoom webinar as we get ready to launch to learn for the 2020-21 school year in Leander ISD. I'm Corey Ryan. I'm the Chief Communications Officer here in Leander ISD. Today, we're going to provide you with some more details and information. Want to do some housekeeping before we get started to explain how this is going to work. We have a panel that includes members of our leadership team here, superintendent, and I'll introduce everybody as we continue to go through, and then we're going to answer as many questions as we can. We're so thankful that you're taking time out of your day. We know for many of you this is vacation, summertime off, but this was starting to feel a lot like March and April, I'm sure, for so many of us, and especially as the case counts continue and news comes out from the state and the region and the nation. And we thought it was very important for us to get out in front of you and be able to be visible, to answer questions, and to give you as much clarity as we possibly can at this time as things continue to change daily again, as we're continuing to respond to the governor, the commissioner, the public health crisis that continues with COVID-19 and everything in between. So we're going to answer as many questions as we can. We apologize. This isn't going to be the last time you're going to hear from us in this type of format. And this isn't the only way that you're going to be able to get access to ask questions and to see responses. We've had over 3,000 separate messages and counting over the last 4 or 5 days with questions from family members and our staff. And we're creating an FAQ, frequently asked questions document, and website to answer as many as we can. So please keep the questions coming. Please know all of the people in this webinar and more are reading them, talking, discussing, considering everything that we possibly can, and going to respond when we have as much finality as we're going to be able to have in this uncertain time. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to start off with a brief presentation, and then we're going to go into questions. We wanted to do a presentation because we wanted to go ahead and be able to take and answer some of those questions that we know are on your hearts and minds right off the top before we get into Q&A and answer other items that we need to address or can address. That's for the parent webinar. The parent webinar will be offered in closed captioning for hearing impaired audiences and in Spanish. So if you know a parent who may have been looking for extra precautions or extra support, please let them know that those will be available. And if for anybody who knows somebody who was not able to get into the Zoom, because there was so much high demand, Zoom is capped at 500 people. We are streaming all of these webinars live onto YouTube. We're not sure if the closed captioning works live or the Spanish translation will work live, but we will be doing that after it's all done to make sure that we have this in both English and Spanish and have all the closed captions on. So please share that if you have anybody who you know who may need those additional services or methods. Want to just quickly go over some of the feedback and questions. We've had another survey open right now for staff. We had a survey for families. We had a thought exchange. We had a survey back in April and into May on remote learning. And there's been a lot of questions about survey questions and about responses and how that's all been handled. And I do just want to make sure it's clear here at the beginning of the presentation that we're collecting baseline feedback and have been just to understand where our community's at and have a general idea. But for many of these things and many of the items and actions that both staff and parents and students might need to take are going to require a specific action, request for an accommodation when it comes to staff, an application if it comes to a new assignment or a virtual teaching position, or the selection of a choice, specifically, when parents are going to have those two choices. The survey is just to get a general feel, but the actual impact and decisions will be made based on actions and choices by our families and staff in terms of when we get those, those decisions have to be made and those actions need to be taken into before the start of the school year. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to our superintendent. Bruce Gearing is going to go and lead us into some discussion and give us some set the stage for where we're at now.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for being here today and listening to us. And thank you for the work that you're doing, that you did in the spring. Thank you for the work that you did in the spring and that you're continuing to do to plan for the start of school. The first thing I want to say is that things are changing really rapidly. So we've said that all through the spring, and that was true. We had a period where it appeared to settle down a little bit and slow down a little bit. But now things are changing again at an extremely fast pace. And that creates a very difficult environment for us to plan as we go forward. So please know that we will try to keep you up to date as quickly and as effectively and as efficiently as possible, but things are rapidly changing. I also want to thank the Board of Trustees at this time for the work that they're doing, both publicly in board meetings, but also behind the scenes as they spend a lot of volunteer hours making sure that the district stays pointed in the right direction. So thank you to them. Our purpose today, of course, is to discuss what's happening as we head into middle of July. How are we going to bring staff back? How are we going to bring kids back? In August, we are planning to operate on the published and board-approved calendar that's on the website. So the start of school will officially be August 13th. And you'll hear through this presentation what that might potentially look like. In the short term, of course, we're headed for an announcement of some kind on July 17th after the board meeting on July 16th with a recommendation of what bringing staff back will look like and what exactly the plan will be for the fall as we bring kids back. We are constantly watching what's happening at the state level with the different agencies, at the county level and at our local city level. We're listening very closely to our public health authorities and making sure that we are following all the guidelines that have been set out from the national level, from the governor of the great state of Texas, and then from our counties and local agencies. We want to share with you what we know, and then of course we want to share what our next steps are going to be. Our number one priority, as always, is the health and safety of our faculty and of our kids. And that, of course, translates into the family of our faculties and the family of our kids, because that is truly the most important thing to us. At the same time, we want to listen and make sure we're paying attention to not only your voice, but the voice of our students and the voice of our families. We want to give people as much choice as possible, but please understand that as we give students and their families choice, that creates a situation where we have to serve that choice. And that will mean less choice, I believe, for our staff and our faculty. If we have kids coming back to school full-time and in person, then we've got to have our staff ready to serve them. And so we're going to work very closely with you if you have special circumstances, and we'll explain that as we go through this presentation. But please know that our initial take is going to be to ask you, if at all possible, to be present in person in our buildings. We are going to do everything in our power to make sure that we take care of you and that we take care of your family and that we take care of our kids and their families. We're going to put every precaution in place that we can to make sure that that happens to the best of our ability and under the circumstances that are dictated to us by agencies that control some of what we do. And at the same time, of course, we've got to make sure that we're providing the high quality and exceptional education that our community is used to and expects from us, and that we are responsible for providing. And so we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that those things happen. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you, Bruce. We're going to go ahead and move on. And Dr. Devin Padaville is, one of our newest senior team members, comes to us from Fort Benning. He's one of our area superintendents. And he's been really taking a lead while moving during a global pandemic from Houston and managing the change that's coming from TEA in the state of Texas. So I'm going to let Devin talk about some of these updates as of July 7th.
Thank you, Corey. So afternoon, Leander ISD. I want to start off with this phrase, and these are all updates we've gotten from TEA. We have a call with TEA and other superintendents almost every other day. And most recently, yesterday, the commissioner referred to the logistical impossibility of doing hybrid. But he said it could still be an option for school districts. But if you research school districts across the state, you will see that every district is slowly aligning to the idea that it is 100% in person and 100% virtual. Now, Leander, you heard us talk about hybrid being an option for our schools. And the reason behind that is it would allow in a greater degree of social distancing if we had students coming in different sets, that 50% of students attending at one time, as an example. The difficulty came in the idea that TEA is requiring us to give parents the option that their child comes to school every day. And we are also required to give parents the option to have their child at home 100% virtual. So if we throw in the third option of hybrid there, what we create is an insurmountable workload on our teachers and staff to provide delivery of 3 different modes of instruction at the same time. We felt, just like other districts have, that this was just not possible. And at the same time, as Dr. Deering described, we have the ultimate responsibility of protecting your health and safety at school. Personal protective equipment is going to be distributed amongst our schools. TEA is providing distribution of sanitizer, of gloves, of face shields, and face masks. And then also in the next 24 hours, when we release our FAQ, we're going to go into great detail about what our requirements by level, elementary, middle school, and high school will be for the use of facial coverings for students and staff. STAR will continue. That was news from TEA. That was almost one of the first pieces of information they provided us before there was any public health guidance. TEA made the decision that we will continue with state assessment, knowing the difficult learning circumstances that are going to be amongst us during the school year. I know many of you are probably wondering how that aligns to the best interest of students and staff. And while it would be improper to push you towards a line of thinking, we do encourage you to reach out to your local and state legislatures if you have any thoughts on this. Virtual learning student commitment. So in the next few weeks, we are going to provide an opportunity for parents to designate if they wish to bring their student to school or if they wish to do 100% remote learning. Now, one thing TEA has made clear to us is that parents should have the option of changing their mind up until the 2 weeks prior to the first day of school. So we do want that information for planning purposes, so we know how many of our students will be learning virtually and how many will be in the building, but that won't be a solidified number until we get to about the first week in August. Thank you, Corey.
All right, thank you, Devin. And we know, as this being our employee webinar, that these HR questions, these employment questions, we're seeing them come in the Q&A, are of the utmost concern and importance. So we have Kelly Vito, one of our directors of Human Resource Services, here to talk about what the employer legal stance is and what we are being able to do or consider at this point in time. And remember, we are still continuing to evaluate what we can do, what we can't do, and determine what's possible to continue to live up to that supporting our staff. Kelly, do you want to go ahead and explain this slide?
Thanks, Corey. And I just wanted to say up front that as everyone has said, we are here to support our staff. We know that there's a lot of anxiety and concern out there, and we are doing everything possible to have as many safety protocols in place that help protect staff from exposure at the workplace. So there were new federal laws passed that did allow up to 10 days of paid leave for these reasons. And I do want to point out that still by far most individuals who do test positive for COVID are not requiring extensive treatment or care. By far the majority have been recovering within 3 to 5 days with no additional need for doctor care or hospitalization. However, there could be the rare case where that would happen. In that case, there may be additional time, FMLA time that an employee might need. So right now, the law, there's lots of questions about this. The law did have a max of 10 days paid leave. So we are working closely, HR, with our teaching and learning team and with the cabinet to discuss that is a federal limitation that we have right now and what that means for our staff. We also have a lot of questions about accommodations. And certainly HR will work with each individual employee who has an accommodation request to understand the nature of the medical condition and what exactly might be needed. There may be certain situations where a teacher might need some additional protective equipment in the classroom. So we're certainly going to work on all those. As Dr. Gehring said at the beginning, right now, we are certainly working with the expectation that we need staff on campus, on Leander site. And we're going to work the best we can to see if we can do that and support what's the best for our students. But we are still looking at any possibility of what it looks like for teachers who are focused primarily on student virtual learning and what that job will look like. So we will be having some answers to all those questions in the Q&A in the next few days.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Did want to go ahead and share this slide because I think it's just important to note as we get lots of questions about face coverings that right now we are under a statewide order by the governor to require face coverings, and the commissioner's comments for schools is that what the governor says is absolutely enforceable and needed in schools. So just thought it was important to share that we know that face coverings are going to be some part of this. I'm going to pass that off to our Director of Health Services, Kristen Wicketts, our lead nurse, to talk about some of the public health guidance we've gotten from the state and to talk about our approaches as a district when it comes to the public health component of this. Kristen?
Hello, everybody. Happy to be here and try and clear up some any questions you may have as we can. I'm just going to go over the public health guidance we received from TA, and please note that this guidance is less than 24 hours old and we are seeking clarifications on some things, but we did want to bullet point some of the stuff that we found pertinent in the guidance, such as the 3-week transition option. Students may return to school if they have tested positive for COVID from a quarantine after they have been fever-free for 72 hours and improvement of symptoms along with 10 days after the onset of symptoms. There's a COVID team, a campus COVID team, and a district COVID team that will be working together to monitor all these cases. TA defined close contact as being within 6 feet for a duration of at least 15 minutes while not wearing a mask or a face shield. We will follow the governor's orders that includes face coverings. Teachers, staff, visitors must self-screen for COVID symptoms before coming to campus each day. And we are requiring parents to keep symptomatic kids at home. Notification requirements for positive and confirmed cases. We are working on a positive case protocol. As soon as that is complete, that will be shared with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. And then we're going to go to our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Matt Bentz, to talk about virtual empowered learning. We know in the spring we were forced into emergency remote learning, and y'all were heroes in helping get that ready in the worst of circumstances. With 3 or 4 months of planning and learning from last spring, Dr. Bentz is going to talk about how the 100% virtual option will look different than last spring. Dr. Bentz?
Thank you, Corey, and good afternoon, everybody. Just to echo what you just said, Corey, yeah, what our teachers, what, y'all who are on the webinar today and all of our teachers in our system pulled off in the spring was nothing short of amazing. And with the can-do attitude and the enthusiasm, I just can't thank you all enough. We also, know and recognize that happened with 1.5 days of planning. And as we move forward, and if you could click the slide back, that'd be helpful. Appreciate it. We get there so people can follow along. So as we move into the virtual empowered learning, as we move into offering a 100% virtual option that will be available for all of our families, any students that need or desire to take advantage of that, that it needed a new design. Now that we had the time to really research best practices and develop the needed professional learnings and trainings for our teachers. So we also gathered a lot of information. A lot of you responded to surveys. The initial survey where we got a lot of responses was towards like after you were closing in on the end of the emergency remote learning time in the spring. We did surveys of students, parents, and teachers, and we'll highlight some of the key components that improve the experience for everybody involved this time around that came out of our surveys. One of the biggest pieces that came around from our surveys was that parents, students, and teachers wanted more face-to-face interactions. They also wanted us to clean up the delivery models, and the piece about grading came up a lot, as you can imagine. So first of all, just, there is a focus and there is a plan and there will be expectations for parent communications. It'll start with a virtual orientation that teachers will give to their students and families, so that families know what's expected of them and what can be expected as they enter the virtual experience. Then they'll also be getting, parents will be getting weekly emails just giving the objectives for that week. And then we'll be looking at monthly Q&A webinars that parents can get on and just talk to their teachers, just keeping that communication flow going. Secondly, people really wanted a consistent daily schedule so that parents who are working from home know what to expect, and teachers have that routine, and students, we all know that good practice with students is to establish those routines right away, and that the daily schedule will look similar in some ways to at least the amount of time allotted as a regular school day. To address those need to make connections and our commitment in Leander here to build relationships and things, we really are looking at, we really need to do the face-to-face learning, that synchronous learning. Now we will balance that with independent asynchronous learning. So it'll be synchronous face-to-face. Sorry, I don't know if I said that right the first time, but there will be times for teachers and students to interact virtually face-to-face. So that students have that time with teachers, they have that time with their classmates. There'll also be that asynchronous time where students will be working independently on projects, on assignments, on practice. There is, as I mentioned earlier, there will be a grading system, and TEA has directed that it will be aligned to the in-person instruction. So at the secondary level, that means that numerical grades will be calculated and given to students, and that those will be included in the GPA. Teachers will need additional training on virtual teaching to be successful. So 2 pieces there. We are offering and providing a foundational level of training for all teachers, kind of a virtual teaching 101 piece that are being offered real soon here, and then will occur during contract time in those days before school starts as well. And then for those teachers that are identified to teach virtually in the 100% virtual environment, we have what's called a Virtual Teaching Academy, and those will be additional sessions. There'll be some choice there to really target, do some targeted learning around what your specific content area or what you are teaching, and some pieces there, but so that our virtual teachers will have a level of training enabling them to be successful and to deliver that high quality instructional experience that our Leander families expect from us and are accustomed to, because they've experienced it when you all have been teaching in our school buildings. And finally, just the use of learning management platforms, like the use of Seesaw for pre-K2, the use of Google Classrooms, grades 3 through 12, to really clean up the delivery systems, and so that parents aren't getting barraged with a bunch of different emails and a bunch of different instructions for how to get their students online. Particularly at the elementary level, our goal is that our students will be able to log in through Launchpad and get pretty adept very quickly at getting moving around and navigating their Seesaw platform, so that they will be able to start their work independently. And when parents will come in is when they are needing help and support with the content and things of that nature. Finally, just like to add, that if we do have a situation where there is a substantial spread, there is always that potential that the entire system would need to move to 100% virtual learning. And so that is why it's so important that each and every one of you, that we are providing that support through training and guidance and things like that to prepare for that possibility that we hope will not happen. Thanks, Corey. I think that just about does it.
Thank you, Matt. And we're going to go and hear again from Dr. Patable Devin, who has been leading principal and administrator and lots of different people who have been working to come up with guidelines for what in-person looks like from a safety and operational standpoint. Devin, you want to share some details?
Yes, absolutely, Corey. So ladies and gentlemen, just to give you a high level overview, our principals are collaborating with us over the next 2 weeks, and we are really working to define safety and hygiene protocols for the building and for the classroom that really protect the health of staff and students. So things we can look for as an example of this, we're talking about structures for arrivals, dismissals, and transitions. And you can probably just, I don't have to explain it, you can imagine that the part of the reason for that is we want to limit the cross interaction of classes as much as possible and the congregation of students in different areas. That is something we need to put on paper, and it is also something the campus leaders and our classroom teachers and our staff are going to have to be. It is a extra effort that is going to take to enforce those expectations. And within these health and safety protocols, it's also important to us that we have a mindset of compassion and community as well. We know for our students, they don't care about a protocol or a program, the thing that makes school feel like a real experience to them is their classroom teacher. And so it's really important to us that we take care of you to the greatest extent we can do possibly with every resource we have, so that you can take care of our students and feel well supported.
Thank you, Devin. And I'm going to pass it off to Kristen. And we've had a lot of questions about contact tracing and notifying of positive cases. So Kristen, you want to talk about this? This will be a process that, you know, is run if it's a student or visitor by the school, and if it's a staff member by HR, but the processes are very parallel. So we're going to let Kristen give some guidance as to what that will look like.
Right, thank you, Corey. As I mentioned before, there's going to be a campus COVID team and a district COVID team that are going to work very close together, and we'll be really working close together on the contact tracing across the district. So if an employee or student tests positive or comes into close contact, comes into contact at home with COVID-19 positive person, the school or human resources will conduct contact tracing and notify that individual if they need to do a 14-day self-quarantine if they were to have come into close contact with the infected person. Again, PEA has defined close contact as being within 6 feet of the individual for 15 minutes or more at any time without wearing a mask within the 48 hours of the individual's onset of symptoms, and when the individual has left school property.
So a couple of the people for these next slides, which weren't able to be in this webinar, but will be in future webinars, or might not be able to, because we have graduation and lots of other things going on. We are looking, because I know we have probably some art and athletics teachers here. We are looking to offer students who choose virtual empowered learning, that 100% remote option, have the ability to participate in fine arts groups and athletic teams. They'll have to provide their own transportation, and even if they're in virtual learning, they will have to attend those classes in person. Clubs are able to still operate, but we're asking for meeting virtually to be as often as possible. Our after-school enrichment program at elementary is going to be canceled for the beginning of the school year through at least December, as we continue to minimize the amount of people who are in our buildings, and being able to make sure we can do regular cleaning after in-person school days. But we are planning to offer that Ymca after school care at this point. For parents and families, we know the social and emotional support is of the utmost concern. We know that the academic needs are going to be there, the achievement gaps are going to be there, but we know that, or the performance gaps, but we know that if students can't feel safe, they're not going to be able to learn. And safety, if safety is our top priority, then their social emotional well-being has to be included in that top priority. So Steve Clark, to our parents, will provide some more details. He wasn't able to be in this webinar. And then we'll have Kimberly Waltman, who will provide some updates to parents about special programs, and you can see some of those details on these slides. I apologize for moving fast. We're trying to keep this geared as much to staff as possible. That way we can get to answering as many questions or more questions as we can. Susan Cole, one of our executive directors of instructional professional learning, is going to just talk briefly about some of the learning opportunities or thoughts as the start of the school year. As you can see, this general slide of that shows our progress in decision making up to this point.
Thank you, Corey. Yes, this slide kind of shows the pathway that we started as we've been planning for the beginning of school. And so a couple of things that we're going to be just doing as we move forward is continuing to listen and monitor and connect with the information we get from TEA and our commissioner. We're going to continue as an executive leadership team, meeting, discussing the best options, continue meeting with our campus principals. We know that the campus and district teams need to connect and plan together moving forward, and then also with our teaching and learning team. And one of the big charges for our teaching and learning team will be to develop this virtual teacher academy that was mentioned several times today. And so just know that that's going to be, as always, we pride ourselves in Leander about the high quality learning that we provide for our adults. And so there's already a lot of wonderful things planned in July. And so we will be finding the best time and opportunity to do that at the end of July. And then how does that also transfer when people are back on contract in August as well? And so lots of details still to work out. It'll be a partnership with our curriculum teams, our Pathways in Innovation, our special programs team, to make that just in time and most appropriate to support our teachers to teach virtual learning. Corey?
All right, well, I hope we were able to get a lot of questions answered in that top portion. And just to know that we're going to answer as many questions as we can over the next 25 minutes before we get on to our next webinar with families, and some of us might have to duck out for graduation and other duties as we get ready. I'm parsing through the Q&A to figure out what are the questions that have the most or highest interest of the people in our Zoom right now. And I'm going to try to combine so we can answer as many questions as possible and capture the intent. Again, we're going to have an FAQ published and answer as many questions as we can over the coming days. So please continue to ask and continue to listen and be receptive. Dr. Bentz, there are lots of questions from our teachers, from their classrooms, about virtual learning. I'm going to combine kind of two questions and pass it off to you. How are we deciding who will teach virtually and who will teach in person? And there's just a general question of will teachers be expected to do both? What will planning and time look like for that, in knowing the unknown? I know that we have, Dr. Bentz, we have a lot of things that haven't been answered, but what would you, or we're still deciding and determining some of these things, but what would you tell our teachers out there who are wanting to know what to expect next year, especially when we consider the two options students will have?
Wow, you really pulled together a lot there, Corey. And it feels weird not to be on camera. People probably think I'm in my pajamas, but I'm not, fully dressed, just FYI. As far as virtual learning, as far as staffing virtual learning, we're Teaching and Learning is working with HR in a partnership to develop a virtual teacher job description. And we will absolutely be working with your principals, who will be seeking out those people who desire or have built up a skill set around virtual learning. Maybe during the spring they found there was tech savvy people that really emerged and felt like they really enjoyed that method of delivery. Also, I know we will be working with HR to look at those people who have put in information with HR about accommodations, and trying to make sure that we are compassionate in some of the decisions there. As far as the teaching models, first thing everyone should know, this is the most important message I think I can give out to you, is that we are adamantly committed to not having any teachers simulcast in their physical classrooms. And what I mean by that is we do not want to see teachers who have a classroom full of kids physically attending their class, and then also have a group of kids live streaming into that physical class, and a teacher trying to manage that type of an environment and workload. We don't believe that's appropriate, and it won't enable our teachers to deliver the high quality level of instruction and support for students that our parents are accustomed to. Second, as we look at how we're going to staff virtual learning, we are working with our principals. We can definitely, we're definitely looking at different scenarios where some of our positions may, maybe might foster like a full-time virtual teaching position at some of the younger grades at the elementary levels. It may make sense with those self-contained classrooms. Whereas at some of the secondary levels, it may look like some of the sharing the load. Our principals are going to be working collaboratively with each other and with us to staff those positions. You know, there may be some basic core areas where teachers are, you know, designated as the virtual teachers, but some of those, you know, other classes and electives and more unique singletons, doubletons, things like that, where a teacher might be teaching in person, except for maybe one section a day. During that time, they'd be teaching virtually. We're still working out the details, Corey.
Thank you, Dr. Benz, Matt, for answering that. We have a lot of questions coming in about leave and accommodations. So I'm going to pass this one to Kelly Vito from HR. Kelly, we have a lot of questions coming in about, particularly about possibly needing to go under multiple quarantines and requiring more than those 10 days for COVID-related quarantines. What would that look like? And then we also have general concerns about equity, where we'll have some teachers teaching virtually and some people working in buildings and some teaching virtually. I know equity and making sure that we're going across things fairly. And to add on to the question, to make it a three-parter, I guess, anything you can share about what a process looks like for from filing an accommodation or for requesting an accommodation, what does that look like? I know that equity is a big part of what we want to do for HR, especially from an HR lens, so that all of our employees have equal access to the same services and we take care of people. Kelly, it's a very, very long jumbled question. I apologize for that. But what would you say to people who have questions regarding equity and their safety, what a process looks like for requesting an accommodation, and then just general concern about health benefits in quarantining?
Okay, Corey, that was a lot at once, but let me start with the first one. I've been kind of scanning through the questions about the leave. So just to clarify, the federal FFCRA leave is 10 days in addition to any accrued leave the district provides you each year. So that's the answer to that first one. The federal law does only allow up to 10 days for any COVID related. So we are still in discussions, I think, as a district of what happens in multiple cases. The first protection we have, what Kristen said, is that exposure definition is within 6 feet without a mask for 15 minutes or more. So as long as we follow the protocols, we greatly minimize the risk of exposure at the workplace. So that's the primary thing. But right now, legally, the federal law, it is a 10-day paid max before employees would need to start using their own leave. However, that's something that I believe the district is still discussing. And so we'll get back with you on that. As far as accommodation request, as Dr. Benz just said, HR is really working with teaching and learning to really define what the role is going to be for teachers who are providing virtual learning. So we really need to completely understand what that looks like so that we're better able to respond to accommodation requests for employees who want that type of role. So we are fast and furiously working with teaching and learning to define that role. The process to request an accommodation is to contact HR. The easiest way to do that is by email, which is leaverequest@leanderisd.org. However, I will say that I would hold on your request for accommodation until we have some information on what that position looks like of providing virtual student learning. So once we can see that and see what it looks like, I think that will give employees, teachers a better idea of that. And then if there is a need for an accommodation. Did I get everything, Corey?
I think you did. And I should have broken it up and just kept on you 3 times in a row. Kelly, is it fair to say then when it comes to the teachers who will be working and teaching virtually, who will be teaching students who are virtual, there could be a path through an application, and there could be a path to that position through an accommodation request. Is that an accurate description?
Right now, as we understand it, we are looking at the potential of an application process for those positions. And there probably is not going to be an automatic accommodation to that position. For this reason, we need to make sure that any teacher would have the appropriate certifications and qualifications to teach virtual. So that a request for an accommodation to that is not an automatic thing. We would still need to look at the position and make sure that the employee has the appropriate certifications and qualifications. So I would say it's kind of a side-by-side path.
Corey, if I could just add that enrollment, the number of students that enroll will dictate staffing needs as well. Just a caveat.
Kristen, there's a couple questions in here about maintaining health and maintaining safety and screening. Can you talk about the self-screening process? And there's questions about testing, whether or not we're going to pay for or offer testing for employees or for students, and temperature checks and things like that. Kristen, can you kind of give an update as to where we're at in terms of just general health screenings, what that could look like, and why we're in the path that we're on?
Sure. I can give you a possibility of what it's going to look like. Nothing is set in stone. I do know that employees will self-screen before coming to campus, coming to work every day. I know we are discussing ways to have students self-screen before they arrive on campus or get on a bus. Like I said, we don't have that set in stone on what that's going to look like exactly, but those are the conversations we're having. As far as temperature checks, that most likely will not be happening as people enter the campus because they're going to be doing a self-screen. If at any time a student or staff member is exhibiting symptoms or is concerned of an exposure, they'll come down to the campus clinic and they'll be assessed appropriately, and we will go from there. As far as testing, that on the employee side of things, that's more of an HR question. Hopefully they can answer that. And for student testing, that is not something at this point we are going to be doing in the school setting. We do have resources and stuff that we can provide to families when and if their students or family members need to be tested. Did I hit everything that you asked?
I think so. Thank you, Kristen.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Bentz, there's a couple questions about elementary school. Jennifer, this might be an opportunity to hear from our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum as well. One question here: for virtual learning, will students at the elementary level still be able to do PE, performing arts, library, and the other specials rotations?
Yeah, so we do hope that all of our students will be able to participate in all of the courses. We're actually working right now as a teaching and learning team to identify which courses can be taught virtually and which courses are really tricky to be taught virtually. So that's something that we're working on now and hope to have finalized next week for people. And so we know that for some of our courses, there are portions of them that can be taught virtually, but other parts of the hands-on options are more impossible. So as you ask about something like library, are we invite students who are learning virtually to come up and check out library books? Those are the kinds of options that we're still trying to plan for, but we do hope to be able to provide as much as possible for all of our students, whether they're learning face-to-face or virtually.
Kelly, we have a lot of substitute questions, and as we know, in a regular year, we have lots of the acquiring of subs, especially in certain times of the year, can be a challenge. The board did approve the slight pay raise or pay increase to substitute teachers, but what conversations are happening in HR about substitutes during this time in this global pandemic?
So I think we all know that it was already a very competitive market for substitutes here locally, and that's just going to be worse during this time. So we are doing a lot of outreach to our current substitute pool to try to go ahead and welcome them back so that we have them available. We did do a slight increase. We also did raise to the board that should the need happen mid-year, we may need to come back to them with an additional pay increase for substitutes to stay competitive in the market. So I know John West, who is over subs in our group, is doing all of this outreach to get our subs up and ready so that they are available to be there and support us as we start this launch.
Thank you, Kelly. Devin, there was a question about being able to come in and out of virtual and in-person learning and training. We know, or in-person instruction versus virtual instruction. The governor did come out with some, or the commissioner came out with some guidance yesterday. What is that possibly going to look like? What would you tell people at this point in time based on what we know of what we can expect for parent choice mid-year?
Yeah, Corey, that's a great question. And I think anyone who serves in the classroom, you know, the one thing that makes routine, as much as you can get it, difficult is the idea that a student may be here on Monday and then virtual on Tuesday and then back on Wednesday. So I want all of our attendees to know we are working to, we're going to discuss in actually our cabinet today of defining those timelines. So let's take a student who is virtual as an example. If a student is virtual and they can come and they wish to come back to school, TEA has told us that we can hold them in virtual up to a certain point. And that point can be no longer than a grading period. So we're going to define what is in the best interest of our students. Now, the idea that a student is in your classroom and wishes to go virtual, that is still something we are defining as a district. But for those of us that are concerned about a kid going back and forth, we're really going to try to define those timelines to avoid those situations for you.
Thank you, Devin. I'm going to go one more time to Dr. Bentz, and then we're going to let Dr. Gearing close this webinar. Again, this isn't going to be your only time to ask questions, get answers, and we do plan to provide this format and in the future as we continue to gear up for 2020-21 school year. Dr. Bentz, there's been questions about classroom size, student-teacher ratios. What can we share at this point about what classroom sizes will look like for the in-person? And then let's go ahead and also add in the virtual learning. What are the thoughts going into that planning?
So I think I'll speak to the virtual learning, and then it may be preferable that I hand this back over to Mr. Padable, who has been heading up that piece of the in-person logistics around in-person learning and what classroom setup would look like there. But for the virtual learning, we are still talking to your principals and working through what an appropriate student to teacher ratio will look like. We do envision some degree of flexibility so that we are able to offer, to the extent possible, the courses that students desire to take, the ones that we can offer virtually, to, like Ms. Collins said earlier, so that a ratio we might not be hitting exactly at the elementary level on the 22-to-1 mark, for instance. There may be a few less in a class, or conversely there may be a few more students in a class as well, as we seek to ensure that kids are getting what they need. As far as the in-person classrooms and what those are going to look like, I think I'll defer to Devin and the work he's been doing with his groups.
Yeah, Corey, can you repeat the question? I missed part of it. because I was typing a response.
All right, there's questions about classroom sizes. What will teacher ratios look like? Dr. Benz or Matt shared some insight into virtual, but didn't want to overstep in terms of what in-person class sizes could look like and what social distancing in person in classrooms will look like.
So TEA has, like we described earlier, TEA has mandated that districts have to offer that families have the option to bring their students to school every day, or they have the option to do 100% virtual learning. So one of the first things we need to do is we are going to ask for parent commitment. And as we get those numbers in about how many students are going to be at home learning virtually, then we're going to work with campus leaders to really look at their class enrollments and their schedules and make sure class numbers across the board at a campus are as low as we can get them in order to maximize social distancing and, you know, really the safety and health of our staff and students.
So that was a lot of information. We could probably continue to talk for multiple hours. And to be honest, I wish we could as just staff only, but we're trying to get messages out and to speak to as many different people as possible. Again, this isn't going to be your only chance to ask questions, to get information, and to see us in this format where you can physically see us. We're going to be returning back to our offices starting next week as well. Some of us already are returned to our offices as we continue this ramp up for 2020-21. Bruce, any closing thoughts you'd like to share with our LISD team based on the state of where we're at right now?
Thank you, Corey. Just again, want to thank you for your patience with us as we navigate these rapidly changing and very challenging times. Thank you for your understanding of the uncertainty. Thank you for your flexibility and adaptability as we go forward. Our job is to keep everybody safe, if at all possible, and to provide an excellent level of education, if at all possible. And so we're focused on those two things, and we're going to continue to work hard every day to make sure that that happens for everybody involved. So thank you. I hope you have a great afternoon.
Hello, Corey. Are we staying on this one? Or are we getting on the next one?
We're going to get on. We have to get on another one, the other one. So yeah, we're still live with everything right now. So I'll see you on the other side.
Yeah, I'll try to shorten up my stuff. Do you want to try to have Kimberly talk on that next one then?
Yeah, absolutely. And okay. I didn't know what to.
No, I get it. Does she have the link? Did I contact her or?